topic I am touching is structure of a rational agent. So we have discussed this. Rational agent consists of three aspects. So one is the environment and the sensory information that goes to the agent program, and then the agent program will take a decision and decide an action, and this action again affects the external environment, and it will cause some change in the environment. Change in the environment can be just switching off on an air conditioner or just the motion of a vacuum cleaner. Vacuum cleaner example is omnipresent in this book that we are forming our lectures based on. And so this part, when you design an intelligent system or a rational agent, will have some kind of an architecture which will receive the inputs from the environment, and some kind of an architecture which will send the decisions or which will send the actions, actuation as they are called it, actuation devices. And together these can be combined, and you can think of the agent to be made up of two parts. One is the architecture. So architecture is receiving the sensory inputs and sending the actuation outputs, and the agent program, which actually forms a link between them. So you can think of a rational agent to be a sum of architecture and the program. So now what AI will do, what is the job of the artificial intelligence in this? It is the job of the artificial intelligence is implementation of agent function through a program, finding a program that implements agent function. So agent function is basically telling you, if this is my sensory input, this should be my output. This is my sensory input, that should be my output. This could be written in the form of a matrix as we discussed last time, or it can be a mathematical function. But this mathematical function has to be somehow implemented, a program. This may be a software, or it may be a hardware program, or a microprocessor, or it can be any device that will take the sensory inputs and take the actuator decisions. So now the primitive approach for doing this will be a table-driven agent program. So what a table-driven agent program will do is, this is the pseudocode for such a table-driven agent program, that you think of all the percepts that are possible for a given agent. So if my input is this, so in the case of vacuum cleaner, for example, what are the possible percepts? So the percepts possible are two kinds of sensors are associated to this. One is the location sensor, and one is the sensor whether the place where the vacuum cleaner is located, it is dirty or it is clean. And then actuation can be either go to the go to the right block or go to the left block. There are only two blocks in the world of the vacuum cleaner that we have been talking about using as a prototype, and two possibilities for the dirt sensing, whether it is dirty or it is clean. So the output will be defined as moving right or left, or suck the dust or not suck the dust. So these will be the percepts. So and also, since agent function does not depend on just the current state of the environment or current percept, it depends on the percept sequence, that is what was experienced before. So there is one difference between the agent function and agent program. Agent function is typically defined for all percept sequences, which includes not only the current percept but also the history of that percept. So if you want to specify all, if this was the history, this should be the action. If this was the history, this should be the action. If you define all such combinations, so what you have to write is, you have to write a percept, a sequence initially empty, and then you have to create a table, which is the table of actions. So table of actions, I gave you the example. In the case of vacuum cleaner, there are two table of actions. In the case of air conditioner, intelligent air conditioner that we said, there can be two actions: switch off or switch on the air conditioner, switch off or switch on the fan, or there can be other kind of actions. So now, after every single run of this particular pseudocode, then this will append the percept to the end of the percept. So it will make a percept sequence. So it is like this. I take this example and I created another example. Say, let us say I want to create an intelligent agent which declares the winner of coin tossing game. So two people are playing or just counting heads. So if just one person playing a game, and if it is head, the person wins. If it is tail, the person loses. So if it's a victory between heads and tails, so if the first coin is tossed, if it is head, your decision will be head wins. Declaration will be head wins. If it is tail, it will be tail wins. It is the first percept. First percept has two possibilities, head and tail. Now in the next stage, again, the percept has two possibilities, head and tail, but since your percept sequence contains all the historical events of this percept, so it will this percept sequence will become HH and or HT. If it is HH, head wins. If it is HT, there will be tie. So these action here are simply the decisions for just understanding this. This may head or tail may lead to some kind of a physical action. So if there is a physical action, you will also attach actuators or devices that can incorporate the decision. It may be just a turning of a bulb, or it may be turning of a color of a bulb, etc. So, and then in the second stage, it becomes 4. In the third stage, the number keeps on increasing. So you can say that percept sequence continues to grow in size, and over a time, this table driven agent will fail. Why it will fail? Because number of table entries with P percepts and T steps is this much, and this number becomes too high for a large number. And these are some examples. Table driven agent is doomed to fail because it is impossible to store a table for most reasonable tasks, not just big tasks, any reasonable task. For example, self-driven car, which has 7 camera percepts, they collect the data at 70 megabyte per second. And if you look at what will be the percept size, say in 1 hour, you will find a large number of exponents over 10 here, thousands of powers of 10. And this becomes impossible for 3 reasons. One, the machine cannot store this much of information. So percept sequence will be impossible to store. The percept table, even if it is conceptually possible to create such a table, it will be impossible to store such a table. Secondly, if you want your machine to learn, or your intelligence system to learn over a period of time, what is the right thing, what right action to take, this learning will become impossible, because learning systems or machine learning often requires putting this in percept sequences into the memory, and then the machine, there will not be enough memory. And even if you have created a table, and even if you have stored the table into memory, you created some big computers and all the percept sequences are available and it is available as a table, the challenge will be to search in the real time that this is my percept sequence. Now find out what is the right action to take in the for the rational agent. So that is where the artificial intelligence AI has to do its job. That key task of AI is to write an agent program which can efficiently and in a practical manner implement this theoretically described agent function. So there are 4 approaches to this to reduce the load on the table-driven agent program. One is called simple reflex agent, the other is called model-based reflex agent, then the goal-based reflex agent, and utility-based. I think some of these terms we have just used in our discussion on other topics. So let me just quickly discuss with you what is a reflex.
Sir, a reaction.
Second?
A reaction that we don't have to think about.
So every action, no, so you qualify the second part. So you say every action we don't have to think about is a reflex. Yeah,
yes, sir.
Can we elaborate a little bit? So how is reflexive action different from other actions?
Sir, it's like an automatic reaction. It's something we're supposedly programmed to do. Like if we see something that's coming to hit our face, we'll automatically dodge without thinking about it.
Yeah, that's right. So what is the alternative to this? What is not reflex? An action which is not a reflex is a thoughtful.
There's something that takes a little bit of critical thinking. Yeah, so like if somebody, it's like if somebody robs us of our money, we'll have to think about giving a reaction to it, like going to the police and complaining about it.
Okay, I think you get it right. So, but let's discuss a little bit more about it. What is reflex? As reflex has been a topic of interest for biologists and psychologists before that. So you rightly said that a reflex is an action which takes place without involvement of conscious thinking. And on the other hand, other decisions, other actions are based on our conscious decisions. So we decide to move our hand. We decide to speak in response to a question. So these are conscious actions. But when we sometimes speak without actually wanting to speak, or we sometimes move our hands without taking a conscious decision to move our hand. So now I have one student, my PhD student here, Manisha, who is from biology. I'll ask her to add to this. What is the biological understanding of reflex? Manisha, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So biologically, it's like if there is a stimulus, then how your body responds to it is kind of a reflex. Like if there's something hot and you touch it, then it's your reflex that you will move your hand away from it.
But what is the mechanism? So conscious decisions are usually taken by the brain.
So
Does
it's
reflex
based
also
on
go through
the
the brain? Does reflex action also go through the brain, or it is taken by locally by the place of sensation?
sir. The brain plays action in it. The transmission of neurotransmitters, the between different neurons, it plays the action. It plays the role in transversing the overall
Reflexes.
action. Yes.
So in our central nervous system, there are two components. One is the central nervous system, and the part is governed by the brain, and part is governed by the spinal cord also. Our spinal cord also can actually lead to certain actions without the signal having to travel to the brain. Is it correct?
Yes, sir.
So there are many actions which are called spinal reflexes. So these sensory inputs do not reach the brain. The decision to act is taken directly by the spinal cord. In fact, in physiology, we say the reflexes, these reflex actions are controlled by what is called reflex arc. And reflex arcs are not considered to be part of the central nervous system. So in general, you see, biologists have also studied that these reflexes are developed very early. Even a fetus has certain reflexes. A fetus does not have a conscious thinking, but a very early child has certain actions which are reflexive, and these reflexive actions help the child to grow and learn about the world. So reflex, and whatever is reflex, the question, another question will be, can reflexes be changed over time? What is my reflex in my childhood? Will it continue to be my reflex forever? This can be open to everybody. What is your experience? What does your experience tell you about it?
So can you repeat once again?
Do our reflexes change over time? Our reflexes remain the same?
Sir, it can change.
So there is a learning element to our reflexes.
Yes, sir.
So can you give me an example of any of your reflexes which you may have experienced?
So, like as a child, I never screamed. Like I was so scared of screaming. But later, with time, whenever I touch any hot object or anything, I started screaming. So it's a reflex action. But initially, I never used to do that. But now I do.
So what happens is you have certain sensory inputs, like thinking in terms of the agents. So agent receives the stimulus or receives the sensory inputs, and in response to those sensory inputs, it reacts immediately based on a predefined program, which is designed into the system. Same way, a human reflex will work. There are certain sets of inputs, sensory signals, and these signals will lead to certain kind of action. So basically, some electrical signal will go to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord will move what is called the efferent nerve, and the efferent nerve will cause certain action. So these actions, what has research has shown is that these spikes that are produced in the through the same signals, if you keep on giving the same signal over a period of time, the responses are slowed down, and actually the reflexes can be modified in response to over a time, when you can change this through the idea of conditioning and through keeping these stimulus, repeating these stimulus over time. So when you said you used to scream in response to certain voice, or you used to feel scared in response to certain screams, let us say this was your reflex action. So this changed because of repeated exposure to the stimuli, or because of the conscious efforts to change your reflex?
So conscious efforts to change the reaction.
So conscious efforts to change the, so consciousness can control reflexes to some extent. Although it looks a little intuitive in the beginning because it is reflex, so there is no consciousness involved. But conscious efforts had an influence on your reflexes in this case. So how will be a reflexive act machine work in the context? Why do we even have to talk about reflexive action? Because we just talked about a table-driven approach to agent. In a table-driven approach to agent, I define all the percept sequences, and I know what is, for every percept sequence, what should be my action. So isn't table-driven approach a reflex machine?
Yes, sir.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's one catch here, just a little bit, which our reflexes are based on, I will relate it to this agent system. Our reflexes are based on our immediate sensory information. They are not based on the history of sensory inputs. Whereas our agent function that we had defined is based on the percept sequence, not percept. So ideally, my intelligent agent or my rational agent should take an action based on its current percept, but also all the percepts that it has encountered in the past. And it should also have additional information like how my percept affected my environment, how my percept affected this. So all those things should go into our mind. These are additional complexities will come to. But the first thing we have to distinguish here, the subtle difference I want to highlight here is that a rational agent does not act just based on current percept. It acts based on the entire history of percepts. That's why in my table I showed you, not in the first few rows, I showed you just single toss of the coin. In subsequent rows of the table, I started increasing the percept sequence, because the entire history of the percept is part of the agent function. That is theoretical function in this case. Practical difficulties are definitely there. So based on this, now what can you say about this table? Is it a reflex-based approach?
No, sir.
It's not, because the agent table that we created is much more complex than that. It is not based on my immediate sensory inputs. So that's the difference between the table-driven approach that we just talked about and the simple reflex based agent that I'm defining.
Sir,
yeah.
When we say that reflex is purely based on the current sensory input and not the past sensory inputs, so when like when Sanya said that let's say when she touches something hot, now she even screams, because earlier on she used to think that screaming was not so okay, but now she's gotten used to it. So isn't that like a result of a lot of inputs of some sort, that now she thinks screaming is okay, so now it's added to her reflexes? So like, is reflex necessarily just dependent on the present input?
Yeah, reflex, because first of all, biologically speaking, a reflex does not even touch the information that is there already in the brain. it is a decision taken by the reflex arcs. In the case of spinal reflexes, it is decision taken by spinal cord. So it doesn't even go to the entire memory that is stored in the brain. So what you're saying is that there are multiple inputs involved. So some kind of a relationship between the sensory input and the output action has been created. And the only thing that the system does is that the current pattern is compared by the existing pattern that is there in the reflex actuator. So reflex actuator's job is only to compare. It cannot compare a huge signal. It compares only the immediate signals. So multiple sensory inputs, yes, but the history of inputs, no.
What I'm trying to understand is like, let's say we consider the reflex from our body to be like a function, but the function just responds to a certain sensory input and gives the output that it's just programmed to give without considering any other factors.
Yes, yes.
But what I'm also trying to say is that the history of inputs that we give to this function end up changing the function.
Yeah, reflex function, reflex itself may have been defined based on the history, but it is stored as just a kind of a mapping, signal to stimulus to response mapping. But signal to I understand what you're saying is that signal to response mapping itself may have been acquired over a period of time, and that is why the history is already there in the reflex action. So this history is already into the program, but this history is not scanned in the real time. So the current action will be based on, now what led to this kind of a relationship developing between stimulus and response, what led to this may be based on history. But what is my current action based on? My current action is based on only the current signal. But why my current signal is leading to this response may be based on history. So there's a little,
right. Okay.
Right? You get the difference?
Yes, sir.
My stimulus response relationships that I have created in the my immediate responses to my actions, my signal and sensory inputs is guided by my history. But that does not mean my current action is guided by history. Okay. My current action is guided by my immediate action. So good that now you are asking, you are discussing this. So it is a good motivation for me, and it will send me thinking at times. So just that's how we learn. So a simple reflex agent now is the one. So we just oversimplify kind of this is a very simple way of working for a reflex agent. A reflex agent will work only purely based on reflexes. That is the whole idea here. So a simple reflex agent is one in which the output depends only on the most recent sensory input, and it ignores the rest of the percept history. So it oversimplifies. Suddenly it has simplified the entire relationship between the environment and actuators. So for a small number of percepts, a table-based approach can be implemented. Simple reflex program can be implemented, but this table now that you create will be a much smaller table than the entire table of reflexes over a period of time, entire table of actions over a period of time that we just we defined. In a more general terms, simple reflex agents can be implemented by way of, so this if you want to make it abstract, what you have to create is if-then rules. If this is your sensory input, this has to be the output. If this has to be the action. So basically you have to define, in order to define a simple reflex agent, you have to define the if-then rule. So if my percept is X, my action has to be Y. If my percept is X2, my action has to be Y2. So of course the number of the actions will be smaller than the percepts perhaps. And now this raises the question. So the number of actions has to be smaller than the number of percepts. For this system to work, for a simple reflex agent, or for any agent perhaps, so can we say that our agent can be rational only if the number of actions, number of possible values of the actions is less than the number of percepts?
Yes, sir.
Why is it necessary?
So because if number of actions will be greater, we will never be able to map it with the percepts.
There will be no one-to-one mapping. You cannot map. The action cannot be unambiguously defined if the number of actions is more than the number of percepts, or some actions will never be accessible. So there will be two situations arising. Either the some of the actions will never be accessible if you have defined one-to-one percept to action mapping. So action will be, some of the actions will be inaccessible, we can say. Other situation might arise that some one percept cannot be uniquely mapped to an action. So machine will not know what to do in that situation. So this will be the problem. So therefore, the number of actions should be smaller than the number of percepts that we have. So now here, number of percepts does not mean the number of sensory inputs. So I have 7 cameras. So does this mean I have 7 percepts only?
Sir, hello. Sir, for the question that you asked, that the number of actions can be greater than number of percepts, because this is also possible that if there is a particular percept, you do this action and this action. So you're performing 2 different actions for the same percept.
Yeah, that is acceptable. If you treat that, if there are 2 actions which have to be simultaneously done, if you're counting them separately, then it is fine, what you're saying. But typically that should be treated as one action because they are being done in pair and they have to be done exactly in the same pair or exactly in the same group. So in my understanding, when I said only a number of actions has to be smaller, I'm treating them as one action. This one action may be a complex action as you just described. It may have to do 2 or 3 actions, but they don't have to be written separately in the table or do not have to create separate action outcomes for the table. Right, Danishwari? Do you,
yes, understood.
Okay, great. So this is how we describe a simple reflex agent, and the example. This is a for the case of the vacuum cleaner. This can be the simple reflex agent work. That there are 2 blocks here, 2 tiles, tile A and tile B, and what this is the pseudocode for how the simple reflex agent will work. So the function name is reflex vacuum agent, and the inputs to this function are two sensory inputs. One sensory input or percept is location. The other sensory input is status. Status may have 2 values, clean or dirty. Location can have 2 values, position A, location A or location B. And now your if then statements will define your reflex action. If status is dirty, then it has to do suck, and if the location is A, then go to the right to B, and go to the right, and if it is B, go to left. So this is how it will be implemented as an agent program. This agent program is a simple reflex agent based program. So now how it is different from the table based, or why it is reflex, is because it is not taking into account what was the action earlier, and it is not taking into account the percept sequences and what was the result of that going from right to the left. So we can think of more examples. Can you think of some more examples of simple reflex agents, your actual machines that may work on the principle of simple reflex agent? Some of the examples I mentioned here: accelerator response to car, slowing down in front, automating AC temperature regulator. Can you think of your own examples so we can think and discuss them? If we can.
Automatic doors sensors.
So can you explain what will be the reflex agent description in that case? Automatic what?
Doors.
Doors. So what are the actions here?
So it will not take the previous actions. It will just check whether someone is.
Just let us list out the number of actions. What are the actions possible here?
To open the door or not.
So just the binary action. 2 actions possible: open the door, close the door.
Yeah.
What will be your percepts? sensory input, whether somebody is there on the door or not, maybe, right?
Yes.
So if your sensory input is that there is somebody on the door, or maybe security clearance, if security has been cleared through the eye or whatever is the security system there, and security cleared, let us say that decision has been taken, security cleared has been taken, and now there's somebody on the door. So now you have to take a decision to open it or to close it, to keep it closed. So this will be based on the immediately the current state of the percept, and a decision can be taken in response to this. So this is a simple reflex to some as this definition goes. Actual security system will be much more complex because you have to go through more steps. So this could be one example, and the accelerator response to the car slowing down in front. So now sensory input says that the car in front of us has been slowing down. It may be because the sensory input says that the speed is slowing down, or it might have seen the red light on the brake lights, the red color on the brake lights, and then based on that it will have to take decisions. So all these things, I think now pretty much you all understand what this system works. Now this system will also have limitations. It will not work under certain conditions. So there are some examples. So let me just, before I show you that on the slide, ask you this. What happens in this vacuum cleaner agent, if suppose location sensor has gone wrong or it has turned off? So what will happen to this? That means your vacuum, out of the two sensors, one sensor got fused or just power off. And it has just one sensor now. That is, it can only sense whether the place is dirty or clean. So based on this reflex agent function, what will happen to the vacuum cleaner?
System will fail. मतलब it will not be able to take decision.
हाँ, तो कैसे क्या करेगा? फेल करने का मतलब क्या है? वो सक नहीं करेगा या वो मूव नहीं?
So it will just suck only. Like it will just check on only one location, and if that is dirty, it will only be able to solve that problem. Like if it is in A position, so it will always stay in A position and check for that position only.
So it cannot take a decision whether to go, whether to suck or not suck. So no, it will, because it is a location sensor has gone bad. So it will just, in this else if statement, it will not reach these two loops. So it will not be able to do anything. I think a better example will be when the sensor which senses dirt, that goes wrong, and location sensing is correct. What will happen?
Sir, then it won't work, because then the first part of our entire decision-making step goes wrong.
So
Like
there,
in the
there has to be some default value incorporated into the machine. If there is no sensing, what should be the default value? So let us say I assign the default value to be, then what will happen?
That is suck at all location, not depending on the locations.
So
The default.
It will go into a loop. It will continue to go from right to left and left to right and continue to suck and electricity, right? So this is one of the major challenges when we design intelligent or rational agents or intelligent machines. This will be an often problem that how does my machine respond? How does my agent respond when the information is not complete? The information may not be complete when one sensor is not producing an output, or maybe because sometimes some information is not available to you for some reason. So for instance, there is something blocked your sensory camera on your driving machine, or some water came on something for a while. So how does these systems work in those cases? In the case of simple reflex agents, these systems will face a lot of problems. So this is the summary written here. So there are three requirements for a reflex agent to work. One is that it can work only if the desired agent function can be effectively determined from the most recent percept only. So in some cases, current information is sufficient. Like in the case of this vacuum cleaner example, current information is sufficient, and this model, this particular vacuum cleaner will work. But in real life situations, when the vacuum cleaner has to really clean a large number of tiles, this information, more information will be required. And there, because otherwise what it will do, it will keep going to the same tile again and again and keep cleaning that. So, if I have 100 tiles and the decision cannot be taken about the right movements, and then if I can know the current location of the tile, and if my vacuum cleaner does not know which tile has already cleaned, then it will continue to look for and either randomly search for these places or just continue to loop back from to and fro in only a small area. So that is when it will fail. And in the absence of the sensory malfunction, it can lead to infinite loops. Like this example I also take, in a larger number of tiles, it might lead to infinite loops or just a localized operation. But this within this reflex agent, some of the corrections can be made. Like if my vacuum cleaner is prone to remain limited to a small area and only clean that area and then not look for the entire room, why it is doing is because it does not have the history of the location where it has already been. So if it is based on only on the current percept, so how can we solve this problem? I still want to use my reflex agent, but I do not have a mechanism to store the history of my history of operation of my vacuum cleaner. How can I effectively do it? Can you give your own solutions?
So we'll choose that initially for left, it will go to left for a while. Like you can define that for this number of steps, it will go left always. And then it for right, will move right.
So you might, what you are saying is you can define a trajectory. That it
Yes, sir.
You then if you define a trajectory in a vacuum cleaner, suppose you are working in a company which is designing vacuum cleaners, and your vacuum cleaner does not have a way to record the history of locations that this vacuum cleaner has been to. Will it be a viable solution to record, to incorporate the trajectory into the system?
No, sir.
Why not? Because the machine has to operate, this vacuum cleaner has to operate in different halls, different rooms. If it is, it
Yes,
has to operate in the same room, perhaps it is possible to write a trajectory and tell how it moves to and fro. So it scans all the positions. But if it has to operate in different scenarios, different environmental circumstances, or different topological, different geometries of the halls, then it will not function. Then what can you do in this case? You do not have a way to store the history. What can you do? Yes, you're saying something, Daneshwari? I can't hear you. I think you are speaking, but we can't hear you. No.
So we can do what Daneshwari suggested earlier though, like we can keep it in a loop that it keeps working. If it
That's what I said. So my sensory inputs, my system does not have a mechanism to store history. Oh, okay, so you are saying that we can just define it again. You are saying
I think we follow the people movement and on they can where go.
Second. Maybe you can write in the chat box if it is not clear. Yeah, learn from people's movement present in the room. So learning is a very advanced thing. So if that is currently we are talking of reflex-based system. Of course, learning is very important in this case, but I'm just limiting myself here to the reflex-based agent. Can a reflex agent still help me a little bit? Of course, it will not be the optimum solution, but can I ensure that my vacuum cleaner is not stuck up in one location or does not just go into a loop? This can be achieved by, I mean, some of these suggestions you have is like it can go around and in a trajectory, but a more widely applicable solution could be randomization. So just let it go in random directions from one tile to the other and so on. So randomization will be a little waste. And so what Daneshwari is saying, not learn, but follow the people's movement. So if it follows the people's movement, perhaps, so some mechanism you are incorporating, that means that will require one more sensory input. So you will have to introduce another camera to capture that information. So all these are possible solutions, but in order to generalize the use of reflex agent or reflex-based agent for somehow functioning when some of the sensory inputs are not available to you, or when the history is not available to you, could be by way of randomization of your actions, so that the system can get out of the infinite loops. Otherwise, the system is very likely to enter into the infinite loops, just as this is in the case of vacuum cleaner. It may be stuck up in a local cleaning environment. Okay, so related to the reflex agent, now if we want to expand this, is called a model-based agent program. So how the model-based agent program is that if you do not have information about the current state in some location, what is my current location? You can still, instead of writing it the entire history, what you can do is you can try to model that information. Can we estimate what that information will be, the missing part? If I do not know the location, perhaps I can store instead of storing the entire history of the locations, I can start storing the most recent information that we had received. Maybe my sensor is not giving me the information currently, but it had given me the information in the past. So I just store the most recent information or observation. So this is helpful in the case of partial observability. So when my sensory inputs are only partially observable to me, when my environment is only partially observable to me, I can handle it by tracking of the part of the world agent, which we cannot see now, which is called an internal state, by the way of we define an internal state for our agent. So internal state is an agent which is a representation of the percepts which are not visible to me right now. And these percepts may have been recorded in the past, and they may have been over a period of time. That will not be a permanent internal state. It will be updated after the sensory inputs, new sensory inputs have been received. So you store not the entire history of the percepts, but one particular representation of the percept, which may be based on the most recent observation, or which may be based on the averaging of the previous phenomena, etc. So some kind of an internal state representation into the model can be incorporated. This will be based on my model, how I'm saying representing my missing information or my incomplete information. So this depends on the percept history, and it will not be the ideal. It will not tell me exactly what is the current state of the sensory inputs that I have not received. I do not know what is there really, but it can give me an estimate. So in the case of a vacuum cleaner in a large room, it may not be if I'm storing an internal state, it may not give me a correct state right now, because it may have, after the time after the last state was stored into the intelligent agent, that location may have changed, but it will still give me some estimate, because if it is stored the most recently observed in the location. And this kind of internal states are recorded into the model in two ways. One is it requires two sub models of this model, which are transition model and sensory model. So it has to know how does the world change in response to the environment. An example typically given in this case is a driver that moves, an agent driver, which moves the steering to the right or left. So if I already know my car is in this direction and my car is in this direction, moving in towards which direction on the road, and suddenly the information about which direction I am moving, that has stopped coming to me. But I know that my steering has moved to the left. If my steering has moved to the left, I can compute that my car must have also moved to the left. So now my new location, I can compute based on that. So this can be incorporated into the program. I know how the world has changed in response to my actions. So how the world changes in response to my actions, and how my actions should be, how the changes in the environment. One is the whatever I am doing, how I am modifying the machine, and whatever is happening in the environment, how it is modifying the percepts that I'm receiving. So both of them, how the changes in the environment is affecting my percept, this is sensory model, and how my actions are changing the environment around me, this is the transition model. And together, the transition in sensory inputs will make what is called the model-based agent program. So both of these information will have to be incorporated. So this is how it works as a flowchart, and this is the pseudocode for this. So sensor information, what is the world right now? And this particular state, this is the hidden state or internal state of the agent. So internal state is stored for a while, even if it is not receiving the current information, what is the current state? And my system already knows how the world evolves over time and how it evolves in response to my actions. I gave you the example, how my car moves in response to my pressing the accelerator or my turning the steering. So I know how my world changes in response to my actions. So if I can incorporate that, I can estimate my current state of the world. So if I have the correct estimate of my current surroundings or my environment, I will be able to take the correct actuator decisions based on the current state. Again, I'm not recording the entire history, but the history is implicitly available through these representations. So that is the whole point, that in the simple reflex agent, I did not have a mechanism to store any information about the percept histories. But here I have modeled the percept history in the form of some internal states which are preserved, and based on the combination of my current state and my current sensory inputs or percepts and an internal state together, they can determine my actions, and actuators will accordingly act. And as these arrows down going to the right and going to the left show the environment, also the changes that have been brought about in the environment will also go back to the sensors, and this modify the internal state. So this internal state can continue to modify. Now I repeat this whole thing in a summary. What we are trying to say here is that in the case of simple reflex agent, we had just the current action, current percept and an action mapping. And we say, okay, this is the current percept, this is my outcome. And there were a lot of problems because the percept history is anyway important. Now, in the model-based approach, we are again not recording the entire history of the percept, but what we are trying to do is we are trying to represent a kind of summary of the percept history in the form of what we call an internal state. And this internal state is defined based on two submodels. One is the perceptor model and one is the sensory model. So based on that, we define the internal state, and now the decision about the actuation will be taken by internal state and the current state, which is a current percept. So together they will determine the actuator actions. Okay, so now model-based approach will tell me about as in the case of car driving, I can get the information where my car is, in this direction my car is moving. Even if I do not have the sensory information, I know that what I did to my steering, and therefore I can calculate my new direction, etc. But then to what end? What do we want my car to do now? Whether I want to accelerate my car, what should be my action? Or whether I should continue to drive, whether I should turn right or I should turn left, what should I do? These actions have to be done based on certain goals. So what is my goal? So that is called the goal-based agent program. So a goal has to be combined with the model. A model will only tell me how do I represent and utilize the information that is being sent by the sensors. And in addition to that, I incorporate what is the history of my interaction with the environment has been recorded in the form of internal state. So model gives me a relationship between the internal state and the current percept on the one hand, and the actuator actions that I need on the other hand. So this gives me a model, the model gives me this. But then what action should I take cannot be guided by the model alone. This can be guided only if I set my goals. What do I want to do? So if I incorporate into this my action, what do I want to do? that will tell me the goal. So as in the case of car driving, my goal could be to reach a particular destination. So I'm starting at location X and Y. So my goal is to reach Y. Or my goal could be that I have a particular trajectory and I want to follow that trajectory. So what is the best way to follow the trajectory? At what rate? Or my goal is to avoid an accident. Or my goal is could be to reach at a given time or to do an action. So my goals have to be defined. So model based agent has to be combined with a goal based approach. So together they will make a complete agent in this case. So as in this diagram, you see that you have an internal state. You ask what is the world right now, like the same point is written here. In addition, I have added here two more blocks which are shown in circles. That is what it will be like if I do this action A. So in order to reach my goal, the agent has to kind of make projections. If I turn right, what will happen? If I take this route, what will happen? If I go left, what will happen? Where will I go? So these are not really based on the internal states. These are not based on the current percept. This is based on my goal. My goal is to reach a particular destination. My goal in the earlier case, in the vacuum cleaner, my goal is to keep the room clean. So these goals have to be defined, and then based on that, those goals, I will decide what actuation should be done. So this is called the goal-based approach. So goal and models have to be combined. Finally, just reaching the goal is not enough. Just reaching the destination is not enough. You also have to incorporate some kind of a utilitarian aspect. So you define a utility function that for instance, I mean, the examples typically given in this case are again the car driving. So car driving is from the location A to location B. What is the best way to reach whether a particular model and agent actuation is taking you to the destination B. But if it is taking you to the destination B in the best possible way, what is the utility of an action? So what are the other value aspects that can be incorporated to this? So for instance, in this could be that what is the world? So you see in this block, one is the internal state representation, and these are how the world evolves, what my actions do. These two together will define my internal state. So internal state has been defined. Now this question is asked always, what the world is like now. This is the percept that I'm receiving. Then this is the current percept I'm receiving, and the history of the percepts is represented by the internal states. Then now this is the projection I made in the model-based approach. What it will be like if I do action A. This is coming from the model-based approach. Now I add one more component to it, how happy I will be in such a state. So this will tell me the utility of my action. So if I do the action, am I happy? So this happiness or this desirability of an action will be determined by what is called the utility function. So utility function may be if my driver is driving in such a way that the passenger, if I'm running say an Uber service or an Ola service, and then I want to incorporate into these systems so that my passengers are happy. So that happiness has to be defined. If I take this action, if I accelerate too fast, will my travelers, will my customers be happy by this? Or sudden acceleration or sudden retardation. So these factors may also start coming into action in taking the decision about what actuation to be done. So this is this will be defined by utility-based functions, and they can directly determine agent action, and the agent program may be adaptive and model free. So over a period of time, if my model is able to receive the outputs and say maybe this may not have, you may not be able to explicitly define what action to take, but these actions may be automatically, if you have multiple projections. I have 100 possibilities. A driver is driving and he has 100 possible combinations of information that he can turn right, he can turn left, he can increase the speed, he can decrease the speed, and he have multiple paths or multiple routes to reach a destination. Now which route to take? Then this can, over a period of time, the intelligent agent might learn. So this may be adaptive, and some kind of machine learning will be able to adapt it and create more and more utility value through the learning process that will come into the learning agents. So these are learning agents. So how do we define learning agents? So you have sensors, you define performance element, and you have a critique, some kind of performance standard. So somebody will tell you whether you are happy or not happy, and whether the utilitarian function that we just talked about, it gives you feedback. And then you will say, okay, these are the actions, 1000 actions I took, and this is the happiness level that the customer returned. He scored the driver at 5, he scored the driver at 4. So these kind of, and this score is a kind of critique. It is telling us whether the utility score is good or utility score is low, whether the agent is performing effectively or not. Even though the agent is achieving its goal of reaching the destination, but still the critique or the value addition through the utility function, like the customer satisfaction or happiness, or maybe health indicators, long-term health, or whatever one may decide, these measures give what is called the critique of a given action. You took an action, what is the critique of that action? And if the critique says, the feedback says that this is not a very good action, then the learning element will try to modify the actions and create a problem generator and find an alternative methods to achieve the same goal. So in this way, the goals are retained, but the method or the route to achieve those goals is altered over a period of time. This is called the learning agent. So agents are learning constantly to improve upon the utility functions, utility value of the actions being taken. Okay, finally, just the last topic here. Then you describe these agent programs. These agent programs can be described in 3 different ways. One is called atomic, and it's called the factor and structure. This is the last point I will make today. This is about the structure. So can you think about what do you mean by atomic representation of agent program? This is actually, the graph also shows, but let me hear from you what you understand from, or can you give examples of atomic description of the agent program?
All the present deviation, each and every, the smallest even.
Yeah, so each state of the agent environment or percept is described as a category A, B, C, D, etc. So it may have some kind of category, and then you just say that if the action is A, if the sensory input or percept is, if the percept is A, then the action is X. If the percept is B, action is Y. So this kind of, atomic representation of individual states of the percepts is called atomic. And this is typically used in hidden Markovian model. You define the states and you define how the states are transitioning, state transitions, etc. So this is how the hidden Markovian model, HMM, is created. On the other hand, can somebody add what is factored representation? Just think of some examples. The actually answer is written on the slide, so just you have to read and also use your some thinking and summarize this again, rephrase it.
The state is defined by a set of features.
Can you give me an example? So this is correct. So you define a state in terms of the world states are described as a set of attributes or set of features, and then each of these attributes will have certain value. These may be categorical values, or these may be numerical values, discrete values, or continuous values. So can you give me some example? Yes. So if you think of the vacuum cleaner example, is it atomic representation or it is a factor representation?
So factor representation, because it has two features, location and status.
But both of them have binary states, right? So it can be described as a kind of just atomic representation. Having multiple sensory inputs does not make it factor. A single state is defined as a combination of attributes, and the number of possible states is too many. It becomes too many in this case. I mean, too many states can be described by a few attributes. This can become a factored representation if you collect the information about the location of the tiles and describe it in x, y coordinates. And the dirt level also you quantify and represent it numerically. So now it has two factors, two set of attributes, one about the location, geography. In fact, x and y are two separate attributes in this case, x position and y position, and the dirt level. And this can be further, there may be additional features of this, what kind of dust it is, etc. So factored is a detailed description in terms of certain identified attributes, and these attributes can take different values, usually continuous values. In the structured representation of the world, agent's world, you do not just describe them as states and not just the number of factors that are associated to each state, but you also describe the relationships between the various attributes. So you can say that, for instance, you can say this is a society. If you want to describe this two societies structurally or two groups of people structurally, you will say in this society that the relationship between the elders and youngsters is this kind. In this society, the relationships is of a different kind. So when you're describing these relationships between the individual attributes, you are already giving a structural representation to your states, your environmental states. So these are some of the examples that may be associated to the agent structure. So with this, we summarize today's thoughts were, we talked about table-driven approach to agent program. Then we talked about the, what was the other? Somebody else, can somebody else summarize this for me? After the table-driven approach, table is a general table, but it is not really an approach. We described four approaches, which are not exclusive to each other, basically. So first one was the simple reflex agent approach, where simple reflex agent works based on taking inputs and directly mapping them to an action. Then you talked about the model-based approach, and then the goal-based approach, and the utility-based approach. So four approaches and how they can be combined with one another. And then finally, we talked about what is a structure in terms of atomic, factor, and finally the structured representation of the world around us. So this kind of concludes what we wanted to discuss about the overview of about the agents, what agents are, how agents work, what are the different components of the agents, architecture, the agent program, agent function, and how the agent programs can be implemented. That is what we discussed. And we also discussed what are the structures of agent programs. What are the issues with this? How do we evaluate the performance of an agent program? These are all the topics we covered in this chapter. And we conclude. If you have any points to discuss or any question, any comments to make or any questions that I'll be able to answer, I'll take that.
So,
yeah.
Sir, not understand the difference between the factored and the structured example that you have taken. Like, what is the in real life problem?
Yeah, this is a good question. So let me explain. So suppose you have an image and you have, for every pixel, you have some information. So if every pixel with its positional information is used as such, as you would do, for example, in the case of machine learning model, ML, neural network. So every position is described. So this is an example of factored representation of an image. But if you use what CNN does is runs through a kind of convolutional layers. So what it tries to look for the relationships between the pixels. So it kinds of builds an internal representation of the features, how the features in or the pixel values are related to one another. Or for instance, when you are recognizing a face, you do not recognize a face by just a combination of eyes and nose and teeth and hair. You relate them in proportion to one another. You will one eye in reference to another eye, and hair color in reference to the skin color, etc., etc. So when you are looking at these relationships and when you are defining these relationships, this is a structured representation. In the factored representation,
Okay.
you not look at the relationship between these different features. You just describe them one after the other. Their relationship with the action is definitely studied, but the internal relationships between feature is not considered.
Okay, sir.
But this was a good question and the right question to ask. And thank you for asking. Anyone else? So thank you then. Thank you for participating today. We are getting better at this. We are learning each other now, and hope to see you next time. I'll inform about the class time again. For this class comprehension, I'll give you 5 questions today, and which you will answer to me as you have been doing in the past. Thank you very much. Have a great day.